There was a moment, right before the helicopter lifted off the clearing, when Liam almost spoke up. Just a second of hesitation, one strange flutter in his gut, as if something deep inside him knew this was not a place he should enter. But the pilot gave a quick nod, shouted something Liam didn't hear over the engine roar, and the machine pulled away, leaving him in absolute silence. The tower was tall, wooden, aged by decades of storms and sun, but still sturdy. It stood on a bold, grassy hilltop, surrounded by a vast, seemingly endless sea of forest. Black Hollow, a name that felt more like a warning than a designation. The trees surrounding the hill were unnaturally dense, their shadows heavy even in the early afternoon sun. The air smelled of moss, pine, and something subtler, almost metallic. He climbed the creaking stairs to the top of the firewatch tower, where his living quarters and observation equipment were housed. The view was immense. Waves of black-green forest rolled out in every direction, the horizon blurred by haze. From here, he was supposed to spot the early signs of wildfires, a plume of smoke, a glint of flame, and report them back through the long-range radio. His job was simple: 2 months alone, watching, logging, and reporting. The Forest Observation and Emergency Control Division, FOEC for short, had done this for decades. A quiet post, lonely, but peaceful, and for the solitude Liam had been craving after years of city noise. It seemed like a dream. The pilot had left him with 2 weeks' worth of food, water, fuel, and emergency supplies. A basic satellite radio system with multiple channels, a generator, a logbook, and a protocol binder the size of a phone book. At sunset, he was to report in, even if he had nothing to say. The first evening went by uneventfully. He unpacked, skimmed through the protocol book, made his dinner, and climbed up to the observation deck just in time to catch the last rays of light bleeding through the trees. The forest was silent. Not quiet. Silent. No insects. No birds. No wind. He frowned but shrugged it off. Maybe he was too used to the noise of human life. Maybe the forest was just different out here, far from the highways and cities. He tapped the mic on the radio. Tower 9 reporting. No fire activity. Visibility clear. Over. Only static returned. Then, after a few seconds, a soft pop and the gentle voice of Central. Copy that, Tower 9. Good first night, Liam. Stay safe out there. Central out. The next 10 days passed slowly. He read. He walked the perimeter, logged cloud patterns, sketched maps, cooked bland meals, and made short radio reports. It wasn't exciting, but it was peaceful, until the dreams began. At first, they were vague. Towering trees with bark like blistered flesh, a black sky without stars, the crunch of bones underfoot. Then the whispers started. Voices in the dark, calling him by name. In one dream, he was staring at himself from outside his own body, standing beneath the tower, looking up at his window, eyes bleeding pitch. He blamed the isolation, sleep deprivation, cabin fever. He'd read about this sort of thing in FOEC training. Psychological degradation in high isolation environments. Totally normal. On the 11th night, just after sunset, he saw the light. It was a tiny orange flicker at first, far off in the deep part of the forest to the southwest. He thought maybe it was lightning, or reflection, but it grew, stronger, steadier, like the pulse of a flame. Not fast-moving either, not a wildfire, a campfire. Out here, that was impossible. No one should be in these woods. The nearest town was over 60 miles away, and this area was off-limits to the public. He adjusted the binoculars. The fire was real. He grabbed the radio. Tower 9 to Central. I have a visual on a fire southwest quadrant. Coordinates pending. Over. Static. He changed channels. Static. He reset the unit. Static. A hollow tightness wrapped around his chest. He stared out at the flame again, a dull heartbeat deep in the belly of the trees. Against protocol, he made a decision. He would check it out. He geared up, flashlight, compass, water, and flare gun. Wrote a quick note in the logbook. Night patrol, southwest sighting. Will return by 1 a.m. Fire may be civilian camp. Radio unresponsive. As he descended the tower, the forest swallowed him. It was worse on the ground. Every step was muffled by layers of pine needles and wet earth. The deeper he went, the harder it was to tell direction. The trees looked the same. His flashlight barely pierced the dark. After nearly 30 minutes of walking, the glow began to rise again through the branches. He pushed forward, breath quickening. Then he saw it. A clearing, a perfect circle, too perfect. In the center, a small fire burned, fed by blackened logs. Around it, bones, some animal, some not, were arranged in spirals. Trinkets dangled from the trees. Baby shoes, Polaroids, carved stones, and bits of cloth stained with something too dark for rust. Liam stood frozen. The fire crackled gently, almost invitingly. He stepped forward. The heat felt wrong, cold at the edges, hot in the middle. He kicked dirt over the flames, smothering it. Smoke rose, thick and strange, smelling of copper and burnt rosemary. He turned to leave, but stumbled. He coughed. The smoke curled into his nostrils, thick as tar. It filled his lungs. He gasped and fell to one knee. A sound pressed against his skull, a chorus. Thousands of whispers, all at once, folding over each other, murmuring secrets he didn't want to know. He screamed. Then he ran. Branches tore at his face. Roots grabbed at his boots. The forest stretched, twisted. It felt wrong now, bigger somehow, hungrier. He didn't stop until the tower rose ahead of him like a gallows against the sky. He didn't sleep that night. He sat with his back to the door, flare gun in his lap, as the forest whispered outside. He awoke to a headache that felt like something had crawled inside his skull and nested there. His throat was raw, his lungs ached. He kept coughing black phlegm, bitter and acrid, like the taste of burned plastic. Morning light streamed in through the cabin window, thin and pale, barely warming the wooden floorboard. The memory of the night before came rushing back. The fire, the bones, the smoke, the whispers. He staggered to the sink, splashed cold water on his face, and stared at himself in the cracked mirror. His eyes looked hollow. Skin pale. He felt feverish, as though something inside him was trying to push its way out. Outside, the forest seemed to lean in closer. The radio was still dead. No matter what he did, tapping the unit, flipping the switches, changing the frequency bands, there was only that flat, oppressive static. Once, while adjusting the dials, he thought he heard something beneath the noise. A single syllable, a breath. Liam. He froze, waited. Silence. He turned the radio off. The day passed in a haze. He tried to busy himself, checking the weather instruments, cleaning his gear, updating the logbook. But his thoughts kept returning to the clearing, to the way the fire hadn't behaved like fire, to the way the smoke moved, and the sounds, the voices. That night he stayed inside, locked the door, pulled the blackout curtains, loaded the flare gun and laid it beside his bed. But sleep never came, only that thin metallic scent drifting in through the cracks. Only the silence, impossibly deep. Then came the knocking. Just after 2 a.m., soft, rhythmic. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. He didn't breathe. Didn't move. Something shifted outside. A scrape against the wooden planks. A low exhale like breath through rotten leaves. Then nothing. When dawn finally broke, he opened the door slowly, every muscle tense. The wooden landing outside was damp with dew. Except for the footprints. They weren't human, long-toed, bare, clawed. And they circled the tower. He didn't go outside again that day. He watched the forest from behind his binoculars, every shadow stretching too long, every movement just a little too quick. He started making sketches in the margins of his logbook. Not of what he saw, but of what he imagined he had seen. Eyes in the trees, figures half hidden in the bark, antlers growing from human skulls. He tried the radio again. This time, there was something. Not a voice. Not exactly. Just breathing. Slow. Wet. Followed by what sounded like nails on glass. Then something like whispering laughter before the static returned in full. He slammed the radio off and backed away. That night, he saw the glow again. Southwest. Same place. He didn't move. He watched. His hand trembled on the binoculars as he stared into the dark, into that slow pulse of orange. But it wasn't a campfire now. It was a ring. A perfect circle of flames. And something moved inside it. Slowly. Rhythmically, like a dance. He felt the smoke again, in his lungs, in his blood. But the fire was miles away. He fell back from the window, coughing. The scent was in the room, the metallic tang, the rosemary, the rot. Then came the whisper. Not from the radio. Not from the forest. From inside the room. Come back. He grabbed the flare gun and fired it straight through the window. The flare burst into the sky like a red scream. But nothing stirred. Nothing ran. No sound replied. The forest swallowed the light without so much as a twitch. He stayed up until sunrise, his back against the far wall, counting every creak in the boards, every rustle in the air, every shiver of wind that might not have been wind at all. When morning came, the tower door had claw marks on it. Sleep became impossible. Every time Liam closed his eyes, he felt as though the tower was breathing with him. The floorboards swelled and creaked, not from the cold or the wind, but from something deeper, something alive. He started recording everything in the margins of the FOEC logbook. Not just weather patterns and visibility conditions, but the things that made no sense. The smell of smoke when there was no fire. The voice in the radio when it wasn't powered. The claw marks that deepened each morning. The dreams that bled into his waking hours. He had stopped reporting to Central. There was no point. The radio didn't function anymore in any rational sense. Whenever he tried to call in, all he received was that static laced with low murmuring. Sometimes, very faintly, he heard screams woven into it, the kind of screaming that wasn't just pain, but despair. Human. Too human. On the 15th night, he found blood on the stairs. Dark, dried, smeared like a dragged body. It ended at the base of the tower where the prints reappeared. Bigger now, more defined. They circled twice, then vanished into the woods, as if the thing had waited there. Watched. Marked its territory. He considered using the flare gun again, but resisted. It had done nothing before. No response from Central. No reaction from the forest. As if the light had been swallowed whole by something too old to fear fire. By day, he paced, sketched what he remembered. The spiral of bones, the flames in the shape of an eye, the figure that danced, too tall, limbs too long, always from the corner of his eye, never direct. One afternoon, while looking through the binoculars, he saw a man. No, not a man. It stood on the edge of the clearing where the ritual had been. Still, perfectly still, dressed in black. No face he could make out, only a suggestion of features like someone halfway erased. Liam blinked. The figure was gone. But that night he heard it speak. Not from the woods, from the stairwell below. Do you remember now? He didn't answer. He barely breathed. He pressed himself against the far wall, every light on, flare gun clenched in his grip. The voice didn't come again, but the feeling remained, thick and paralyzing, like he wasn't alone in the tower anymore. The next morning, he found the logbook open on his desk. He hadn't left it that way. The last page was filled in his own handwriting, but he didn't remember writing it. There is something beneath the roots. It wears the forest like a coat. It does not sleep. It remembers. He turned the page. Another entry. The handwriting degraded, jagged, frantic. It knows my name. He flipped to the back cover. Scratched into the cardboard in deep gouges. Don't let the smoke touch you. His hands shook. He dropped the logbook. Later that evening, the static on the radio shifted again. Not words, but something worse. A recording, his own voice, screaming over and over. He smashed the radio with a fire axe, wood splinters, broken dials, gutted wires. Still, the scream played until the power finally bled out. That night, he dreamed of the clearing again. The fire burned blue. Around it, figures stood, holding hands, faces turned skyward. Each one wore Liam's face, some laughing, some crying. One stared directly at him and whispered, "You never left." He woke up standing outside the tower. He had no memory of getting there. The cold had seeped into his skin, and his boots were soaked. In his hand, he clutched a bone, long, human. He dropped it and backed away. Then, from somewhere behind him, a voice as dry as leaves, "Stay." He ran, up the stairs, into the tower, slammed the door and blocked it with the desk. Sat there until the sun came. The tower had new marks on it now. Deep ones. Whole words scratched into the wood. "We are coming." He was forgetting how many days had passed. He checked his watch, but it had stopped. The calendar on the wall was stuck on the 16th, but he knew it had been longer, maybe 20 days, maybe more. The forest had changed. It watched him now, openly. The air tasted thick, electric, heavy with breath that wasn't his. He realized something else. He hadn't seen the sun in 3 days. The sky had lost its color. Liam stood at the edge of the tower's platform, staring into a sky that once was blue, then gray, and now simply wrong. There was no sun, no moon, no stars, just a blank, humming void. The kind of sky that seemed like it could fall if you looked at it too long. The forest, too, had changed. It didn't breathe anymore. It watched. No birds, no wind. The trees were frozen in place like petrified bones, twisted upward toward that lifeless sky. At night they groaned, and Liam no longer pretended they didn't. He hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. The clocks had stopped. The calendar was meaningless. Time unraveled around him like wet rope. He tried to mark the days with scratches on the wall, but sometimes he'd wake to find them gone, or worse, doubled. Scratches carved not with his hand, but with something else, something deeper. Each morning brought new damage. The outer frame of the tower had become a canvas for something's claws, not random marks anymore. Symbols, spirals, shapes that made his head hurt to look at. Sometimes he'd stare too long and see them burning under his eyelids when he blinked. Other times, the wood itself seemed to whisper. The floorboards bled sap, sticky and black. He kept the fire axe near, though he knew it wouldn't matter. The thing out there, the things, weren't afraid of steel. They weren't afraid of anything. When he looked out with the binoculars now, he didn't see the forest. He saw shapes, like holes in the trees, moving, breathing absence. They followed him with every turn of the lens. One morning, he heard laughter from beneath the floor. Not human, not quite. He tore up the floorboards with the axe, desperate to find the source. But beneath was only dark, dense earth and old roots and bones, small ones, some with tiny teeth marks. He replaced the boards and didn't sleep that night. The radio, though broken, sometimes clicked by itself. Once, it turned on without power and played a lullaby he hadn't heard since childhood. Another time, it recited names. His mother, his old friend Andrew, a girl he had loved once, then his own. He screamed at it to stop, and it did, but not before whispering, "He remembers you." There were more footprints now, not just one set, dozens, all clawed, all circling. They danced around the base of the tower like worshippers around a shrine. He stopped looking. He stopped cleaning the blood. Then came the night of the knocking. Not soft this time, not testing, angry, demanding. Boom! The entire tower shook. Boom! The windows rattled and something howled. Not from the forest, but from inside the walls. Boom! He clutched the flare gun, though there was only one round left. His breath came in shallow gasps. He didn't know if he was screaming or the tower was. Then silence. Total and suffocating. Until a voice pressed through the walls, as though whispered directly into the grain of the wood. "Let us in." He shoved the desk in front of the door, barricaded the windows with bookshelves, mattresses, anything he could lift. He didn't sleep, couldn't blink. Every time his eyes closed, the whisper returned. "Let us in." The forest was no longer outside. It had moved into the walls, into the air, into his head. He heard branches cracking through the floor at night, smelled smoke and blood when there was nothing burning. The tower itself had become a living thing, groaning, shifting, waiting. And then he saw it. At dawn, standing at the edge of the tree line, almost human in shape, almost. Pale, tall, too tall, bones too visible, joints bending wrong. Its head was tilted like a curious child, and even through the binoculars, Liam could see that its mouth never moved. But he heard it. "You've always been here." He dropped the binoculars and backed away. That day, he packed a bag. Not with supplies, with his journal, with the flare gun, with the only thing that still reminded him he was once a person. He wrote a note. It was short. "I am not alone. I am not sane. I was wrong to enter these woods. If anyone finds this, do not stay. Do not listen. Do not look at the fire." Then he waited. Waited for the sound of rot beneath the floor. Waited for the tower to scream. Waited for the thing that wore the forest to come and knock one last time. But no sound came. Just the wind, the first wind in weeks. And with it, the faint hum of a helicopter approaching from the east. He stood, opened the door, and stepped into the gray light. And smiled. But it was not Liam who smiled. The rot began to speak. They arrived in the early morning, the twin blades of the FOEC helicopter carving the mist to shreds as it descended toward the tower. Standard supply drop, no signs of urgency, just another routine in the schedule. From above, the forest looked calm again. Quiet, unthreatening, even beautiful in that still, painted way. Things sometimes look from a distance. The pilot hovered while the technician leaned out, scanning for Liam. No signal from the tower. No movement. That wasn't entirely unusual. These observers sometimes missed check-ins. Isolation did strange things to the mind. They circled once, twice. Still no sign. "Let's drop the gear and do a quick sweep," the pilot muttered. He probably slept through it. They landed 50 yards from the tower and approached cautiously. The structure looked intact, but older somehow, warped like driftwood. Moss had crept high along the stilts, and long scratches marred the wood all the way up to the top deck. Deep gouges. Not human. The technician reached the stairs first and stopped. "Jesus," he whispered. The door to the tower stood ajar, gently swaying in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with dust and rot. The scent of mildew, the slow decay of something once alive. The lights didn't work. The solar unit had been ripped from the wall and lay in pieces on the floor. The desk had been overturned. The mattress torn open. The flare gun was gone. And Liam was gone too. Not a trace of him, no blood, no sign of struggle. Just one thing left behind. A page, torn from the logbook, pinned to the wall with a blackened nail. The note, written in frantic strokes. Some of it smeared, some of it burned around the edges. Ink and something darker, something crusted. The technician read aloud. "If you are reading this, I am already part of it. It lives beneath the soil, but it moves through the air, through the roots, through the smoke. I saw the fire. I saw too much. I breathed it. I tried not to listen. But it speaks in your own voice. It wears your memories. It waits until you're alone. Don't trust the forest. Don't trust your thoughts. It comes when you forget the sound of your own name." Beneath the writing, symbols had been drawn. Spirals, eyes, hands with too many fingers, a ring of trees. At the center, a black circle, shaded violently with the word hollow scrawled over and over inside it. The technician backed away. Something about the handwriting. It shifted when he stared too long, like it was still being written. Slowly, beneath the paper. They didn't search further. There was nothing to find. As they lifted off, the pilot glanced back at the tower. Something moved at the window. A figure. Tall. Pale. Watching. When he blinked, it was gone. Neither of them spoke on the return flight. The note was filed. The tower officially listed as vacated due to psychological event. FOEC replaced the station a year later, stationed someone new. Young, fresh, healthy. The forest looked peaceful. But the whispers never stopped. And sometimes, on quiet nights, the new observer dreams of smoke and wakes with black phlegm in his throat.